Hello everyone, my name is Donnie, also known as Elevated, and I am here to bring you a preview of the second minor of the DPC season, the Bukovel Minor. And hopefully by the end of the video, I will have given you a bit more information about how each of the 8 teams got here to this point, and hopefully that will make you a little bit more hype to watch them as we traverse the landscape of the minor. So let's get right into it with our first team, Gambit. And Gambit is a team that I'm pretty high on going into this minor. I think they have a reasonably good shot to win the whole thing and get that spot at the major. And the primary reason for that is that they have 2 extremely high-skilled players as their mid and carry. GPK and Dream are both in the top 5 MMR in Europe for both the support and core leaderboards, and they are extremely high-skilled, despite having somewhat limited experience competitively, with each one having only been on one fairly major team before joining Gambit. That being said, they are captained by FNG, who has a unique ability to bring together lots of inexperienced or somewhat volatile talent in the CIS region, and he's been doing this for several years now, making them into good or even great teams. As we saw last year, Gambit narrowly missed qualifying for TI9, and a large part of that was thanks to FNG's excellent captaining. Gambit has played a lot recently, and they have experience against the best teams in the world, especially coming off this Singapore LAN that happened just a couple of weeks ago right before this tournament. There's no better practice than playing against the best in the world before heading into a DPC event. The players on this team are a good mix of experience and up-and-coming talent, which has been a pretty good recipe for success in the Dota 2 ecosystem. Shotchlo is their offlaner, and he brings a lot of competitive experience to Gambit, having played for both Power Rangers and Effect and about 30 other teams over the last several years since 2013. And as their offlaner, it's nice to have an experienced player, a stable player, and it helps to offset the relative inexperience of the other 2 cores. XS Vampire is the position 4 on Gambit, and he's a bit of a wild card, I have to admit. He's a very high-risk, high-reward player who tends to make a lot of space for the dynamic duo of GPK and Dream, but also tends to feed a lot at times. But that being said, sometimes that's what you need to do, and GPK takes advantage of that by being an incredibly aggressive player who has been absolutely loving the mid meta right now, which is full of high tempo heroes that like to take over the game in the mid game, such as Templar Assassin and Puck. And the nice counterpoint to that in Gambit is Dream, who is more of a true carry player. He doesn't like to get involved that much early on. He plays a lot of these slower paced heroes, the Anti-Mages, the Naga Sirens, and the Terror Blades that split up the map and farm for quite some time before reaching a critical mass and then joining their team to ultimately win. And with this information, I think that people might be a little bit curious why I'm so high on Gambit going into this event with a relatively unproven roster and having been demoted to the minor in a region that's not that strong this year in the CIS. But don't be fooled, this is a major caliber team, and I think that they probably are the second best team in CIS despite not getting that second slot. They just happen to run into both a brand new patch and their arch rival and Kryptonite Solo, the captain of Virtus Pro, who has just really been besting FNG in the CIS region for the last several years. At this point, I have to believe that that's just a really bad matchup for Gambit. Against pretty much every other team, FNG makes a very good showing as a top tier leader and strategist. As I said before, I think that Gambit are actually one of the favorites to win this whole tournament, since they come in a little bit under the radar, as they usually do. They're usually underdogs, and they have a fairly heavy boost in momentum, having played against some very, very high-quality teams in Singapore not too long ago. Like many CIS teams, however, Gambit is prone to highs and lows, so there's definitely no guarantee, but it would not surprise me to see that red star still standing on the final day of the tournament. Moving on to the second team, and it's going to be another CIS team, which is Team Spirit. Team Spirit is a solidly Tier 2 CIS roster, and expectations for them heading into the Bukovel Minor are somewhat middle of the road. Like most CIS teams, they have high highs, but also heavily inconsistent performances. And while Misha has proved to be a solid captain, as well as a Master Chen player, and ILTW is a gifted core who even got some time to run with 2-time TI champs OG last year before being replaced with Ana before that second TI, and that's definitely very good experience to have. They just aren't quite able to put it all together consistently. All 5 players on this roster have shown flashes of brilliance, but again, it's really just struggling to align all of those brilliant flashes at the same time into a cohesive team. I'd expect to see some highly aggressive and potentially cheesy drafts coming out from Spirit, as snowballing the lanes into a big early lead will probably be their best strategy and approach for victory. In addition to their inconsistency, Spirit is coming into the LAN a bit cold, with a new player in their offlane role having Non-Grata replace Ghostic, and so there will definitely be some holes in their game that I think will be exploited by more polished teams at this minor. So their ceiling is probably about 4th place. However, with their playstyle and a slew of last pick trump cards such as Meepos and Broods, Lycans, Spirit may very well play spoiler in the group stage to some of the more experienced teams, and should be something that top tier teams at this tournament should definitely not overlook if they want to make it to the major. The third team that we're going to be previewing is Ninjas in Pyjamas. NIP looked like the 3rd best team in North America during the Dream League qualifiers, but unfortunately for them, this revelation came one tournament too late as NA dropped a qualifier slot from 3 to 2 in the 2nd cycle in the DPC, and NIP fell to the Bukovel Minor. Since qualifying, however, not everything has been peachy for the Ninjas in Pyjamas, as they elected to drop their carry Skitter in hopes of shaking up their dynamic. This move will be an interesting one to watch develop, as the replacement is a relatively unknown player from the UK named Tanner, who most recently competed with Viking GG in the EU qualifiers for the Dream League Major. Tanner actually carried Viking GG to several high-profile matches, and he looked quite solid doing it as an inexperienced prospect. Tanner is a mid player, however, which means that the former mid of NIP Gunner has shifted into the carry role, something that he has not played competitively much in his young professional career. Though Gunner has often been seen as a fairly farm-intensive mid player, he also favors aggressive playmaking heroes such as Storm and Ember Spirit. Gunner is definitely a good enough player to make this transition into the side lane role pretty seamlessly, but I would imagine it will probably leave PPD looking to draft him more of these comfort heroes that he's been playing in the mid lane that can also be played in the side lane, such as the Tinies, Lone Druids, the Morphlings, the Ember Spirits, instead of going from more of these traditional split pushy late game carries that are starting to come back into popularity. NIP is definitely still a team that is in flux, having moved regions, switching players, switching up their roles, but if there's a veteran core that you want to develop a team around, you can't do much better than TI5 champions Universe and PPD. PPD has always been an opportunist who likes to find every possible angle to get an edge on his opponents. And so I think it's a little interesting that after removing Skeeter from their roster, they picked up such an inexperienced mid player. But on the other hand, Tanner was on Viking GG, who beat Team Nigma in the Bukovel qualifiers during the upper bracket finals. And considering that Team Nigma are probably the heaviest threat to win the Bukovel Minor and go to the major, maybe there's something there. Maybe Tanner has the secret sauce that can make NIP best Team Nigma at this minor. NIP should place well, regardless of whether they win it or not, but ultimately only one place really matters, and it's hard to see such an in-development team taking the step and bringing everything together with such short notice to actually take on such a strong field of opponents. I would say that their ceiling is probably around 2nd or 3rd place, but I do not think they have quite what it takes yet to win this minor. The 4th team that we're going to look at is Furia, and Furia is a team that I think drew kind of the short straw when they ended up in the same group as both Beast Coast and Pain Gaming during the Dream League qualifiers in SA. Even so, the inexperienced Brazilian squad showed up to play, splitting their series with both of those teams, and actually even tying Beast Coast for 2nd place in their group, losing a BO1 and ultimately being bounced into the minor qualifiers as a result. In my opinion, the SA qualifier groups were not balanced, and so it's kind of a shame that we didn't get to see them in the bracket stage against the likes of Pain or Beast Coast. However, they did dominate the minor qualifiers and punch their ticket to Bukovel, so we do get to see them play, which is cool. Furia is a strong CSGO org, and so it's nice to see them diving into the Dota 2 scene as well, with a roster of hand-picked and developing talent from Brazil. It's funny to note as well that their captain Duster, formerly of the TI8 Pain Gaming squad, is the most experienced player competitively on this team despite only being 19 years old. This lack of experience will probably be pretty heavily exploited by the more experienced captains at the minor tournament, but it should be a great step up for Furia's competition and their experience, and so it should be a good learning experience at the very least for them. They will likely end up in the bottom 2 at this tournament, but who knows? Without much data to go on, many other teams could underestimate what the Brazilians are bringing, and so we could see some exciting upsets in the making. The next team that we're going to be looking at is the Fighting Pandas, and this is always an exciting team to watch because of the nature of their players. They have several high-octane players, shall we say. There's really never a dull moment watching them play some Dota 2. When the Pandas announced their roster, everyone immediately began the countdown to detonation, but Eternal Envy and friends surprised many when they not only qualified for the first major of the season, but actually battled their way to the top upper bracket in their group stage. The detonator count did restart shortly after the major, however, as they were bounced from the tournament 2-0 by Vici Gaming and then Beast Coast, finishing in 9th through 12th place. Since the event, the Pandas have shuffled their positions, if not their actual roster itself, and like NIP, they found themselves with an additional hurdle to qualify for the next major when NA dropped from 3 slots down to 2. Despite a good group stage in the Dream League major qualifiers and actually beating EG in the first round of the upper bracket, the Pandas fell to Chaos and then EG in a second matchup, narrowly missing their second major of the season. Things began looking a little extra shaky for the Pandas when they dropped their first series to perennial rivals J-Storm in the Bukovel Minor qualifiers, before eventually finding revenge against them 3-0 and ultimately punching their ticket to the minor. The Pandas are a very experienced and very skilled team that struggles to find consistency at times. Their new configuration, having shifted AUI 2000 from 5 role to 4, Snaking from the 4 role to 3, and Moon Meander from the 3 role to 5, has looked a bit more comfortable, as I said before, and I actually got the pleasure of casting them at the WESG tournament, where they looked quite good against somewhat weaker competition. Despite the memes and uncertainty surrounding the team culture of the Fighting Pandas, they have shown the capability to scrap with the best teams in the world, and only a fool would count them out at the Bukovel Minor. On the other hand, they could just as easily bomb out and shuffle the roster shortly afterwards. Moving on, let's take a quick look at RNG, or Royal Never Give Up. The lone Chinese representative at the Bukovel Minor is RNG, and this is a team that was heralded as a potential breakout team at TI9 in Shanghai last year, and ended up with a respectable 7th to 8th place finish. With a relatively young core of players, RNG elected to keep all 3 of their cores the same, with Monet playing carry, Setsu playing mid, and Flyby playing offlane, and build around them. With the departure of Lanam and Afu in the supporting role, RNG's coach, the legendary Chinese star Super of DK and Vici Gaming fame, has stepped into the 5 role, while one-time rising star September, formerly of LGD, has joined as their 4 player. This new roster has been grinding away, and they are definitely my dark horse pick here at the minor to win the whole thing. Not only is this a TI caliber team from a talent perspective, but they have always been one of the most aggressive teams in the Chinese region. The current playstyle meta aligns extremely well with the preferences of their 3 cores, and many of the popular heroes do as well. Setsu is one of the best puck players in China, and Monet would rather outfight you than outfarm you. Additionally, and finally, while much of the Western world has been on somewhat of a holiday break over the Christmas and New Year, RNG has been playing official matches in some of the many Chinese leagues against the best teams in their region. With series victories only 2 weeks ago over LGD, eHome, and Keen, I'm extremely excited to see what RNG bring to the table in Ukraine. Moving on, we have Geek Fam, the lone representative from the SEA region at the Bukovel Minor. Geek Fam is a team that developed quite a bit of hype from SEA fans in the offseason as Cuckoo, Raven, and Dubu joined forces. So far, the squad has fallen well short of these expectations, however, and failed to crack even the top 4 in either of the first 2 major qualifiers. Not so surprising then that Geek Fam opted to replace one of their players, removing their mid, the lone NA player Ryoya, in order to shake things up. Ryoya's replacement, Carl, has been bouncing around the SEA scene since 2015, but is most well known for his time on Execration back in 2018. It's hard to say whether this roster move will bear fruit for Geek Fam, as they have yet to play any official matches since making the switch, but it's certainly possible that some communication issues have been fixed. They will be up against a very tough field at the minor, and my guess is that they will struggle to break into the top 4. The meta could aid them, however, since the SEA playstyle favors aggression, scrappy fighting, and I will say that Raven in particular showed up in true Tier 1 player form during the minor qualifiers, and many of the popular heroes are exactly in his hero pool, such as Lone Druid and Drow Ranger. And our final team that we're going to preview here is Team Nigma, and I would say that tumultuous is a pretty good way to describe their last few months. The All-Star roster went on hiatus after leaving the comfortable confines of the Team Liquid banner and skipped the first major of the season to work on forming their own organization. Shortly before the second major qualifier, Kuro and crew unveiled their new project to mixed reactions from the community, shall we say. I have no doubt that the controversy surrounding their new branding, in combination with rust from not playing any real official matches and their extended vacation since TI, played a pretty big role in the team's failure to qualify for the second major of the season. They even struggled a bit in the minor qualifiers, but after finishing the final day with a 2-0, 3-0 and qualifying, it does somewhat indicate that the TI7 champions have begun to right the ship. They enter Bukovel as the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing based on sheer star power alone, and I would be a fool to disagree with the masses in this case. In addition to having more time to learn the patch and knock off the rust, the dust has finally settled a bit around their somewhat controversial branding, and this should alleviate some of the out-of-game worries for the crew. This is not to say that we can just hand them the trophy and the slot at the major, however, as there are plenty of questions still to be answered. How will we truly fit into this team, and can he really work with Miracle as a core duo? Does this team have enough new ideas to overcome several years of data on their playstyle and strategies? Will they be able to handle the pressure of coming into the tournament as the massive favorites to win the whole thing and with a huge target on their backs? The TI9 runner-ups have the opportunity to make a statement about their place in the scene here, and it's hard to bet against such a top-tier roster, but nothing is certain in Dota 2. I hope that this little preview has gotten you a bit more excited about watching the Bukovel Minor and given you a little bit of backstory and information on the teams that will be attending. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know who you think will take down the tournament in the comments section below. We'll see you next time.